Welcome back in, Clay Travis, Buck Sexton Show. We are joined now by James Blair, White House Deputy Chief of Staff, a.k.a. the Oracle, joining us now. All right, so that's a pretty cool nickname, and I imagine that doesn't stink to be the White House Chief of Staff Deputy that is known as the Oracle. So let me ask you for your predictions, Oracle, on how the big, beautiful bill is going to go. And what should this audience know about it from your perspective?
Appreciate that. Good to be with you guys. I think that the big, beautiful bill will get out of the House this week. I think that obviously if it gets out of the House this week, then it will go over to the Senate. They'll work on it for a few weeks, and the goal is to get it on the president's decks by July 4th, which I think will happen. Look, we've got to get this done. This bill has so much to love, guys. First of all, let's talk about the border first and foremost, which nobody's talking about anymore because the president has driven illegal border crossings to zero since he came into office. But this bill funds border enforcement, adds 10,000 new ICE officers, gives them pay raises, gives us everything we need logistically to not only keep the border secure for the president's entire term in office, so we don't have to come back and do this again, but also to deport people and get millions of illegal immigrants out of this country, which is something that a majority of the American people support. Secondarily, it gives us the funding we need for our military. You know that the president is involved in complex negotiations across the globe to bring peace. That's backed up through strength, and it gives us the funding to modernize our military and make sure it's the most lethal fighting force in the world for the foreseeable future. But then the big thing that it does that everyone's talking about is the tax cuts. This renews the president's historic tax cut from 2017. That was the biggest in history, and then adds more taxes on top, everything he campaigned on. No tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime pay. It will be the single largest tax cut for middle and working class Americans in the history of the country. And it will do that while still generating more than $1 trillion right now, $1.7 trillion in savings for the American taxpayer, which is twice as much savings that has ever been delivered by Congress in the last 30 years, and that was almost 30 years ago under Bill Clinton. So we're getting the country's fiscal house in order. We're giving people money back in their pocket that they earned. We're deregulating. We're unleashing energy. We're securing the border. We're rebuilding the military. We're doing what President Trump campaigned on, plain and simple. So there's still some little issues being worked out with a few guys at the edges, but in the big picture, I think we're right on track, and I think we'll get everybody there.
James, appreciate you being with us, and certainly a lot to be excited about that is in this bill. For those who are concerned about the debt, who want the spirit and action of Doge to be enshrined in some way in this bill, what do you say to them, and what can we point to that deals with getting that fiscal house in order, not just for this year, but in the longer term?
Yeah, great question. Well, first of all, it's important to note that this is by far the biggest savings, which I mentioned a minute ago, but let's put some points on it. Back when Bill Clinton was president, Congress passed a package that saved like $800 billion in spending cuts, okay? This one's looking like 1.6, 1.7 currently, and they'll still be, iterated on a little bit as it goes through the Senate and everything, but more than double. Okay, Congress literally has not done anything like that in over 30 years. So right there, those are the biggest savings that we've ever seen. We're doing something called rescissions, which is the stuff that Doge has found, this bad stuff. We go out, the Congress votes on it in what's called a rescissions package that's actually separate from this bill, but then it permanently pulls out that stuff out of the budget, okay? There's savings and then in that. And then, what's not counted in this bill, and it's just a stupid quirk of how legislative scoring works, is tariff revenue. The president is bringing in hundreds of billions of dollars of tariff revenue right now, and that money's not being spent, okay? That money's not being spent in the big, beautiful bill or anything else. That's just money in the Treasury that goes straight to deficit reduction. So sometimes, when they call it the Congressional Budget Office, which kind of puts out the charts, they're not being honest because they don't add in the tariff revenue and some of the rescissions and the different things that are happening. So you're not really seeing the full picture. But the fact is, this is a huge step in the right direction for getting the country on a better fiscal footing. And we're unlocking growth. There's three things we have to do really to get to a balanced budget, which the president hopes to achieve at some point before he leaves office, but, at least in the foreseeable future. we've got to grow. Okay, we've got to unleash our economy. We do that through tax cuts. We do that through deregulation. We do that through getting government out of the way. We're doing that, right? That's partly the president, partly Congress, partly Doge, all of those things combined. Second, we got to do spending reductions. I already told you the historic nature of those spending reductions that we're doing. And then the third thing is we've just got to deregulate, and we've got to bring more jobs in. And ultimately, in 2017, we actually collected more money in taxes, which improved the fiscal picture as a result of the tax cuts than we would have if we didn't have the tax cuts. That's because more jobs were created. More people were paying taxes. So we've got to add revenue. The tariffs are doing that. We've got to cut taxes. We've got to cut regulation, unlock the economy through growth. We're doing that. And then we've got to do spending reductions. It's going to take all three of those things, concerted effort over a period of time. But if we just stick through it here and we are able to do it for 4 years instead of 2, which means we have to win the House majority back in the midterms, then we'll be able to really be on a great, sustainable fiscal path. So I think we're on the path. But, it's not all going to be done in one bill. We're going to have to do a couple, and this is a monumental first step, way bigger than anyone expected months ago. So we're really proud of that, and we just got to get it done.
We're talking to James Blair, White House Deputy Chief of Staff. You mentioned the border. I also think this is important. The tax cuts expire. So for people out there who don't realize this, what happens if the bill doesn't pass?
Well, if this bill doesn't pass, first of all, economic forecasters have said we're going into a recession because taxes are going to go through the roof. All of these tax cuts we passed in 2017 will go away at the end of this year. Okay, so the average family is going to pay thousands more in taxes if the bill doesn't pass next year. Businesses are going to pay thousands more in taxes. We're not going to have the money to secure our border. Okay, all of these terrible things are going to happen. It'll be the largest tax hike in history if this bill doesn't. So that's just not an option, right? If we don't extend the debt ceiling, the country's going to default on its debt, which could drive us into a global depression, right? This is not our fault. This is Joe Biden's fault. We're just here cleaning up the mess, and that's what we have to do. It's not anything anybody wants to do. It's something that we have to do. The country can't default on its debt, or people would pay the price in a massive way I don't think any of us can even fathom. And then on the border, look, we've got to ultimately have money to pay for planes and law enforcement to get people out of the country, and that money is coming in this bill, and that is such a critical piece. Everyone needs to understand that illegal immigrants in this country, the level that Joe Biden brought in, are a huge drain on our system. When you talk about the spending, I mean hundreds of billions of dollars being cost by illegal immigrants being in this country and being on public programs are in place for American citizens. When we get them out of the country, that's actually going to lower our spending levels massively without doing a single thing. One of the changes in the big, beautiful bill will be getting millions of illegal immigrants off of Medicaid, okay? They're costing Medicaid billions of dollars a year. So these open borders that we have to not only have the border secure, but we got to get these people out so they stop draining our public resources. All of this stuff has to work together to get our country on the right fiscal path forward.
Appreciate you being with us. Thank you so much for giving us some of the details on the big, beautiful bill. What can you give us a sense as to what this announcement is supposed to be about the Golden Dome?
I'm going to let the president break that news, but it's very exciting stuff. Look, the president, it's something he's talked about for a long time. The president wants to make sure the homeland is secure. He wants to make sure that other countries are deterred from ever thinking about even remotely thinking about attacking our country. So it's all part of his vision of having the most lethal fighting force in the world, and that is what really gives us the leverage to sit at the table and demand peace, not only for ourselves and our allies, but everywhere across the globe. And the world has been better off when America has been strong in the world. And that is part and parcel. Having a strong military is part and parcel of that effort. Peace through strength.
Thank you so much for the time. Keep up the good work, and we'll talk to you again soon.
Thank you, guys.
That's James Blair, White House Deputy Chief of Staff. Buck's going to be excited tomorrow because his Knicks are in the Eastern Conference Finals against the Pacers. I'm going to be headed up to the Indy 500, which is going to be taking place this weekend in Indianapolis. And the NHL playoffs are underway. Major League Baseball, you got a favorite team. My Braves are finally back above 500. You can get hooked up with all that at Prize Picks because they've upped their game with new offerings to go with the playoff action. If you haven't downloaded it yet, it's all about the player. You just pick more or less on a player's stats. You can up to 2,000 times your cash. Just a week ago, 1,000 times your cash. Now, playoff knowledge, NHL, NBA, Major League Baseball knowledge. Get hooked up right now. Prize Picks, best way to get action, including in California, Texas, and Georgia. If you've been feeling left out, withdrawals fast, safe, and secure. Some hitting your account in as little as 15 minutes. Over 13 million people have downloaded the Prize Picks app. You can do the same. Use my name, Clay, as the code to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5. That's code Clay to get $50 instantly after the first $5. PrizePicks.com, code Clay. That's PrizePicks.com, code Clay for $50. California, Texas, Georgia, and 30 plus states nationwide. Run your game with Prize Picks.